Today's scripture reading comes from Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 through 18 and 24 through 28. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, "Was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire?" They replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on the bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their heads singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God." This is the word of God.
Today, we are on chapter 3 of book of Daniel. And we are going to talk about another attribute of God and kind of delve into it. Today, my sermon was a little short, so I don't want to have your hopes up, but hope is concise enough. I read in a Korean newspaper, which I do off and on. There was a new apartment building going up. I think it's set up 6 or something like that, and about 25 floors high. In the middle of it, some ceiling fell off, and then they found out the reinforcing bars were missing. And this organized crime, thing and all that kind of thing happened. So they have to demolish the whole set of buildings. And as a result, today I'm talking about integrity. What looks outside is not necessarily what's inside. We know that very well, right? Just because worldly success, having a good job, money, education, and kids, doing well and whatever is not a proof that that person is moral or more righteous or pleasing to God. Oftentimes it's not. Same thing in every other, spheres of our life. Just because we have some churches are large, it doesn't mean we have better spirituality than other people. Or because it's a small church, it doesn't mean it doesn't please God. A lot of things we take it just face value of what we see. Oftentimes, though, that's not the whole picture. And sometimes the calamities in our lives reveal what's truly inside. And we get astonished by what we find in times of trouble. And today, the story you are very familiar with, book of Daniel. If you went to Sunday school, you heard about this many, many times over. This Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, friends of Daniel. We don't know where Daniel was at this time. And the King Nebuchadnezzar was an emperor of a vast empire. He has conquered many different regions with a different religion, language, race, culture, and everything. And he had a need to unite them, to be under his control. And so while he gave, permission, allow the people to worship their own gods and whatever else, religion, he need to kind of consolidate them. So he built this idol and had people come and bow down and worship. In a way, kind of a show of loyalty, not to that idol, but to himself. As a tyrant, as a king, he needed to see people under his, subjugation fully. So when you think about it, it's not really religious activity. It is a show of loyalty to the king. And you can rationalize that very easily in your head. And that's the situation. And if you don't, they're going to throw you into the fire, and that's it. Your life is over, right? And you know the story. And the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, rather than taking an easy route of justification or rationalization, they stuck through their principle. And they're punished for it, and they're thrown into fire. And God delivered them. That's the story. And we like to kind of see what we can learn from here, because it reveals what faith and integrity is about. It shows only those people who have this type of faith will finish well, and God shows up miraculously in this kind of setting. I dare to say there are many Christians do not experience miracle in their spiritual life because they always shortcut themselves for a miracle, because they rationalize and justify, compromise, opportunistic rather than principle-driven, willing to pay the price, lay down their life, but they cannot go to that place. So this is why Jesus talked about take the narrow road. Taking a narrow road is not a matter of taste. Taking a narrow road has a price, and not many are willing to pay that price. And when people are not willing to pay that price, they shortcut themselves from the work of God. So here, last week I talked a little bit about Robert Clinton's book and Making of the Leader, and today I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. This is what he calls it, integrity check. It's not going. It's either the battery's out or somebody's messing with me back there. All right? Now it goes, okay? So Robert Clinton was my professor, and he used to be an electrical engineer, so, we kind of, understand each other. And he said many times, he's into statistics, so he did all this study and all that kind of stuff. And he said, less than 30% of biblical character called by God finish well. That is proven in church history. About same rate, about 30% finish well, and rest of them don't finish well. And in current, church ministry and all that, we see that as well. It's kind of scary. And he talks about why few leaders. That's all of us. People of influence. Maybe you are influencing your family, your colleagues, or your neighbors, or whatever else. Right? You are leaders. You influence people by your action or inaction. So here, why do some Christians don't finish well? Number one, most major failure in ministry are dominantly rooted in spiritual formation issues, spirituality, rather than ministerial formation or strategic formation issues. What he's saying is this: it's not lack of skill people fail in ministry. It's not lack of information that you don't finish well. Right? It's about spiritual. It's something in the core. Something that is hidden from eyes. Right? Number two, the most of these failures can ultimately trace basic failure of integrity. Now we are using the word integrity. I wanna define it this way. Integrity is constant honesty. Right? So what you see in the public is what you get in the private. Right? What you see in good days was also what you get in bad days. Consistency in honesty. I put honesty in there because he mentions about it. Number three, leaders who fail often do not have integrity, but instead have some sort of deception about at least some of their leadership. I want to explain a little bit more about this. On the other hand, the leaders who finish well across the board are leaders of integrity. Now, what does it mean? Some sorts of deception about their leadership or personhood. Deception goes both ways. You deceive yourself and deceive other people. In order to deceive other people and not have mental stress, you need to deceive yourself first. Right? And this is what I talked about all the time, about Jacob and Esau. And Esau sold his birthright, and before he sold his birthright, he said to himself, what good is my birthright if I starve and die? Was he gonna starve and die because he skipped a meal? No. Why did he say that? Because he's convinced himself, deceived himself that he's about to die. He's in a dire situation. If he doesn't sell his birthright, he's gonna die. He had to deceive himself in order to deceive others and in order to have some sense of sanity in his life. Believe it or not, many believers do this all the time. They compromise within, they willingly deceive themselves in order to deceive other people. And this is a dangerous trait. Now, for those of you who are married, too late. But those of you who are not married, listen to me. This integrity is not keep your marriage together. You have to look for men and women of principle, not opportunists. People who are willing to put down their life for the truth, for the covenant, for the promise. Not when they feel like it and don't feel like it. It seems like there's a better option here and all that kind of things. And this will manifest in your finance, in your parenting, in your spousal relationship. It spreads everywhere because the core is true you. And if you start to lie to yourself, then you're fighting the wrong fight because the end is clear. You're going to lose. So here, Robert Clinton's point is this. The many reasons the people don't finish well in their faith is because they fail in telling themselves the truth and sticking with the truth, no matter what the price they have to pay. They're always looking for option to get out. Now here, this is what King Nebuchadnezzar said to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it says, if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? All right? It's just words from the pagan king. And the answer is the Yahweh God is the one who can deliver them out of, the hands of the King Nebuchadnezzar. So what King Nebuchadnezzar is saying this, these three were caught because they refused to worship this idol, and they brought out to the king. And the king felt sorry for these young people, right? And he said, why do you want to waste your young life for stupid gesture, right? I don't do that. Be reasonable. Come on, you're young people. I have invested a lot on you, right? Now, Just do once, and you're off. The world always approaches it like this. Be reasonable. Why are you so... You don't have to believe like that. Over there, they don't do it that way. Everybody's doing it. What's your problem? That's how they approach. All right? So when you listen to it enough and say, well, I don't think it's that bad idea. You come to that. So I want to talk about faith that protects us from that kind of reasoning and that rabbit hole that a lot of people fall into. And let's go to the answer. Because I reference this passage all the time in my sermon. And if you've been with me, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're rather new, I pass by so quick, so you don't know, what is that guy talking about, right? Not that you understand everything I talk about or care to understand. So here's the answer. This Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answer. What kind of God can deliver you out of my hands? And this is their answer. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and He will deliver us out of your hand, O King. But even if He does not, let it be known to you, O King, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Now, the answer is here. There are 3 stages of faith, right? And in order to have you receive what God has prepared for you, you need to have a complete faith. You cannot have partial faith, right? And this is very, very important sentence. So let's start with the one. Number 1 is hypothetical faith. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver you from the furnace of blazing fire. Now, in United States, the survey goes, there's a 63% of population in the United States believe in some kind of God. Some kind of God, and by their definition, God is powerful. God can deliver people from the problems, right? So 63% is about 210 million people in the United States believe that there's a supernatural being who can deliver us out of problem. This is hypothetical at best. It's a very incomplete. So if you believe like this, wow, I have a good faith. No, you are not. Guy in the street, have same faith. We come to church, there's no difference. This kind of faith will not benefit you or give you peace. You need to have at least second type of faith, and that is this. Based on what God can do, is a personal faith. He will deliver us out of your hand, O King. He can deliver us is not real faith until it becomes He will deliver us from your hand, O King. This is a qualitatively different statement because it has a conviction not only of God's power, potential, but His loving intervention based on relationship with you, personal relationship with you, that you're going to receive the benefit out of this relationship. That is different faith. You got to have at least this type of faith to see and experience some type of miracles, a provision of God in your life. But this is not all that complete either. Because while you can experience God's intervention in your life, it also sets you up for great disappointment. See, like you say, well, God is powerful. Anybody can say that. But God is love, and I believe in this personal God who's going to intervene in my life for my sake. That's a little bit better. And some people experience God's hand in this. But this does not mean you can go around and say, God will do this, God will do that. And you go to hospital, God will heal you, and all that kind of stuff. When God didn't say that. That's a presumption. That's not faith. So there is a fine line between having this conviction and faith that is from the Lord, and there is that presumption, what we call triumphalistic faith. Now, this we experience God through His provisions and protection in real situations in life with this type of faith, this personal faith. However, this personal faith can lead us into triumphalistic, two-dimensional faith, which often leads us to great letdown and disappointment. This is triumphalistic faith. Oh yeah, God is a formula. You do this, you do that, and then boom, here it is. It's a great vending machine. You put the right button and coin together and you get Coca-Cola. Right? God is not impersonal, mechanical like that. And as if going around say, if you will do it hard enough and all that, this will happen. That's a lie. It doesn't happen like that. We don't have all the knowledge of the situation. We don't have all the options. We don't even know what is possible in the circumstances. So we have to rely on not only God's power, not only God's love, but God's wisdom. Right? And this is a complete trust. This is a faith. But even if He does not, see, it's important to say God can. It's also more important to say God will. And it makes it complete by saying, even if He does not, even if He does not deliver according to my wishes, my prayer, my desire, I still trust in Him. Why? Because His God is not only power, but He is not only love, but God is wisdom. He's true. He knows in the dimensions that I have absolutely no idea of. And out of His good intention, loving heart toward us, He's letting this happen. Sometimes this situation is like a blazing fire. So painful. There's no explanation. So difficult. And yet, for unknown reason to us right now, God let it happen. And trusting in that situation is true faith. I've seen people who experience God in a supernatural way, and they thought by putting those formula together, I know, I believe, hype it up, pump it up, and then because of that, God has responded. Are you kidding me? You're dishonoring God. It's borderline blasphemy. God can be manipulated by our hyping up. It's not that. Most powerful prayer is, God, I'm scared to death. I don't have an ounce of faith on this matter. Because of your word says so, I'm going to continue. That's faith. I don't say, I believe, and because of that it will be done. No, it's not like that. And this triumphalistic faith is so attractive to so many people who are in great need. And they come to this and they have a great disappointment. Many of them completely leave faith altogether because this faith without integrity. Life is more complicated than that. Life is difficult. It's complicated by sin, complicated by the conflict of interest, many dimensional of perceptions. And because of that, it is difficult. So, how do we then have this complete trust faith? You need holy abandonment. And I was telling some people, how to receive healing from the Lord. And this person is a dire situation. It's life or death. This is not cold we are talking about. And I share bluntly, we all going to die. You're going to die, I'm going to die. It's a matter of time. And God's timing. And we're going to approach this. We're going to ask for God's mercy because He can and He will. But even if not, you need to first abandon yourself at the mercy of God. This abandonment, the Bible talks about cast your fear to God. This word cast is throwing down, like a football player made a touchdown and then throwing down. And it's that fashion. You gotta abandon yourself. Self-preservation and whatnot, you gotta let it go. You gotta come to grip with the fact and live it, the fact that you are not in control, that God is in control. Don't assume, don't act as if you are controlling something that you cannot control. Let's be honest about that, right? So you come and say, God, I'm scared to death. Not necessarily because I might die, but it might do to my family. How are they going to take? How are my kids? I'm scared to death. I'm fearful. You got to face your fear. And then let it go. Because you cannot control it. You're trying to control something you cannot control. You become insane. And so, holy abandonment is what is necessary to experience this peace of God, which Jesus has promised to us. And that's real faith. And I see people a lot of talk and all that, and when push becomes shove in their parenting of their kids, in their buying of their house, in their dealing in the businesses, or whatever else, something more even painful. You're pregnant and you're expecting, and the ultrasound comes back pretty bad. And the doctor and social workers and come around and say, you got to abort the baby. What do? Does life belong to God? Or is it a burden? Can you live with a child with a special need? Or is it conveniently just get it over with? Go to the next door, move on. Sometimes this honesty business becomes really tough. What are you going to do? Integrity means it's not okay in one setting, it's not okay in another setting, it's not, it's acceptable, honest. It's not like that. You need to be consistent, even if it costs you dearly. That's holy abandonment. In that way, peace of God comes. The complete trust of God not only relies on God's power and love, but also His wisdom, His kind intention toward us. This type of faith is hyper-situational, which brings us peace of God. No matter what situation, what fire that you are in, this will bring us peace because you have already abandoned yourself. And this is key to the peace of God that Jesus promised in John. It says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. The world cannot give this type of peace because the peace from world is situational. Everything depends on the condition and circumstances. But this peace of God is hyper-conditional, hyper-situational. Why? Because we have abandoned ourselves at the feet of the cross. As Paul says, it is no longer who I live, but Christ lives in me. And that brings into peace that is of another kind. Outworldly kind. That is what we call holy. Completely separated. That peace we are talking about. Many Christians, brothers and sisters, listen to me. Many Christians do not experience miracle in their life. Many Christians do not have peace in their life because their faith is immature at best. And the faith that is not acceptable unto God. This consensus, oh, if there's God, He could probably do that. That is not faith. But a lot of people think that walking around and doing and thinking that is faith. That's why they make wrong decisions all the time. Faith means that you have completely abandoned yourself to what? The truth of the Word of God. So if your life does not align to that truth, you will not choose self-preservation, but you'll choose the truth in the Word of God. That's what it means. That brings us to integrity. That honesty continues into your life only by that. That strength is called integrity. I was talking to a man who was raised up by his alcoholic mom. Father has abandoned already. And the mom, life is mess. Get up, all that. He has to take care of himself, his mom, sometimes bail her out of the jail. You would think his life would be a mess. But if I were to tell you what kind of person he became, you'd be surprised. In a worldly sense, very successful. In a spiritual sense, man of true faith. Situation does not make us. And because of that painful experience of his mom, he had the discipline. And he stayed away from the substance altogether because his mother's family is all messed up because of that. And this, because it was so easy, there's so many disappointments in his life, just like the rest of his family does, just pick up a bottle and forget about it. That's the way, that's mode of operation for entire family. Why not? He didn't. That restraining power that has become a muscle that he transferred it to every part of his life. And he became a successful man. God blessed him, indeed, as a man of faith. See, a lot of us think like world. If you have this situation, then you will become like this. If you have a well-providing, loving father, you will become. No, it's not. Look around. There are so many good parents have kids completely messed up their lives. On the other hand, vice versa, right? Things happen. What I'm saying is this power of integrity, the ability to stay honest in every and different circumstances, being consistent, what is outside and inside look the same, that is what God honors. Robert Clinton was an engineer, so engineer language, integrity check, means like if you have a building material, looks good outside and fits the spec, but inside there's a crack that you cannot see from outside. Or there's a compromise in some of the programming or whatever else. And those are the integrity check we do. Before we build, we better make sure these things can't handle the load or stress. You cannot tell by looking at it, only by applying stress. And that's what happened. And this Daniel story is these people were thrown into fire as a result of that because they are not willing to make that rationalization. This is not really, we are not worshiping Nebuchadnezzar's God. We are actually just showing our loyalty to him, right? We are, after all, we are officers, right, in his court. And He could rationalize so easily out of here. I don't know about you, but I can. But they didn't. Sometimes to the world, you look foolish because of this. Prudish at best, naive. Sometimes just stupid. Does your reputation, is it more important than your relationship with God? Your desire to honor Him? So this integrity is something that really keeps our faith bring to the center and biblical. Now, having said that, I want to talk about the fire itself. In life, there's a lot of fire. Some fires we walk into, some it's not our choice. But we are talking about this fire that we chose to walk into today because of faith, because of the principle, integrity. We walked in. But this fire has benefits. Once again, let me say this. Many Christians do not mature because they don't step into fire. Our fleshly response is we want to stay away from fire, right? All of us. If you love fire, you have a problem. Yeah. It's a natural thing to self-preservation. We don't want that, of course. But there come a time you have to step into fire in order for you to stay pure. Have a sincere faith and have integrity. You have to stay in the fire. That has its own rewards. Unseen benefits of trial by fire. Let me just read this. Then King Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officers, "Was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire?" They replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Number one benefit of the fire. The flames of trial often burn away the very issues in life by which we used to be bound. This happens only in the holy abandonment. You know, some miracles only happen in the fire. Did you know that? Some miracles only happen in fire. You know, there's an American saying, God help those who help themselves. I know what he's trying to say. Like you proactively cooperate with God's hand and do all that. But some people take it, like wrong. They think if they help themselves and God feels sorry and He comes along and says, okay. It's not that. It's a lie. If you can truly help yourself, God wouldn't help you. In fact, if you are under a presumption or deception that you can't help yourself, God will not help you. It's when you come before God and say, God, I cannot help myself. That's when God helps. And a lot of times, this fiery trials set people free from vices of addiction or unhealthy emotional trap and the looping or things. A hardship actually puts disruption in the cycle of destruction. Do you know some people good at small talk and they always make friends easily and all that. And about 3 years and 5 years, it's like a pattern. and they have a problem at work. The friends leave, and all that kind of stuff. They have to restart again, reboot, and then about 5 years later, and they come to the same place. What's going on? Then you begin to ask questions. Why am I so lonely? I have nobody to talk about my problems. Nobody desires me. Maybe there's a problem within me. Maybe it's the way I treat people. Maybe it's me. Sometimes in difficult circumstances, we begin to look at things from different angle. And sometimes that sets us free from narcissistic or hedonistic value system. And we get set free. We begin to care. Some of us are put in a situation that your freedom is taken away because you have to give care for somebody. Maybe your parents or kid with a special need or whatever else. You feel like that life has become colorless. Nothing is enjoyable anymore. You don't have freedom and all that. And yet, through that, something that you didn't have before. You are a thoroughly selfish person and begin to empathize with the need of people. And because something's changing. Rather than just complaining, why me, and all that kind of stuff. This is why Psalmist said this, it is good for me that I was afflicted. He says, it was good that I was in the fire because I learned your statutes. Your truth has become not just conceptual, but it has become something in my life. I own it now, right? And then James, he says this, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, fires, knowing that these fires produce endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. This fire will give you that. There's a benefit here. And only if you remain faithful. And how do you do that? The holy abandonment. Trusting God for what is worth. And think about this. If you trust God up to a certain point, and all right, that's a lie, I cannot go beyond, then you wasted all this trusting. You suffer for nothing. And that last 5% is where it counts. And you do suffer for 95%, and you cannot handle 5% because you cannot let go. And some of us are like that. You are obsessive and compulsive, have to be in control, have to have last say so. And this will prevent you from having that peace of God or experience the miracle God has in store for you. And sometimes this fire sets us free from very, it's like that, when you see a young couple, when their first baby go, oh my gosh, they don't know what to do, two of them. And then two babies, okay, one for you, one for me, And by the third baby comes, and who's going to take care of that one? And give it up. And then kids become healthier, at least emotionally. These helicopter parents and oh my gosh and all that. And I say, oh my gosh, we are so tired, we don't know what we are doing. Let them go. And they become healthier, blossom, they become brighter. When they're only one and both parents get in, kids are so dark. Abandonment has these benefits. And the fire becomes so hard. You're taking care of your parents who are, showing dementia, and your kid is not healthy in this way, having school problems and being bullied, and and then you have this job to juggle, and your job is not certain, and all these things happen at the same time. And you go, why me? God will not let you be tempted beyond your strength. But with the temptation, He'll provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. God is after your heart. God is after your integrity. And as you do, all the things that God has prepared is yours. That's a key. Second benefit is encounter with Emmanuel, God with us. God is never far away from the brokenhearted. God is never far away from brokenhearted. Psalmist said this, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. God is always available to the brokenhearted. God is so near to the brokenhearted. And people in the fire will experience Emmanuel, the Son of God, standing with them. And this is what I'm saying. The people who avoid fire at any cost will not experience this Emmanuel presence of God in their life. And this is the thing. This is pre-incarnated form of Jesus Christ, standing there with them in the fire. They're already loosed, and they're bound, thrown into fire, but they're already loosed. This fiery trial did its job already. And every intents and purposes, Jesus is not really needed there. They're not harmed. They're free. But Jesus chose to be there. You see? God is always near the brokenhearted. Sometimes it is in your most difficult time in life, you may not feel like it. That's when God was the closest. I don't know, about 20 years ago or 30 years ago, the footprint in the sand. And those of you who's been a believer a long time, you hear about this. If you're new, you probably, what are you talking about? Well, let me tell you this. A man had a dream, and there are two sets of footprints in the beach. And he realized that's his life, right? And the one is his, and the other is God. And God walked with him all the time. But he noticed there are some parts that are only one set of footprints. And he realized there's the hardest time in his life, and God abandoned him. And why? Why weren't you there for me? And God answered, that's the time when I carried you. That's my footsteps. And that is so true because, first of all, we can only tell by retrospect. You cannot tell front in your life. And the second is, even though God is with us or is the one who carried us, we don't feel like it. You know why? Because we are so filled with sadness and disappointment. Case in point, Mary Magdalene met risen Jesus. And she thought he was a gardener. You know why? Because tears in her eyes. Tears in her eyes prevented her from recognizing Jesus. Sometimes we are so sad and overwhelmed by our own disappointment, especially if you are coming off from triumphalistic type of faith. We are so disappointed in our own selves and disappointed to God and disappointed about everything. When God is the one who carrying you, you don't feel like it. And that's only human. I'm not saying as a condemnation or anything like that. But only retrospective say, that was God. That was God. That was God. That wasn't me. And your heart is filled with, thank you, Lord. I thought I was the one who suffered. but you carry me. There's no way I could have conjured up that power to stay sane through those times. It was you, after all. See, why? Because God is always close to those who suffer, those who feel abandoned, those who feel powerless. So this is what Nebuchadnezzar said. Look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of fire without harm, and the appearance of the fourth is like a son of the gods. See, that's what happens. Even to the eye of a Gentile pagan, there is a freedom in the fire. And there is. Why? Because we when you're in fire, we cannot handle these frivolous things we decorate ourselves with. You have to make choice, right? Is this going to be sustainable or not? Or is this important or is it extra? You have to cut away and burn away all the extra. You have to be focused to survive. That's why we get freed from frivolous things. And finally is this, we pass the integrity check. And this is the words of King Nebuchadnezzar. It says, Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed be God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel," in this case Jesus, "and deliver his servant." He's a deliverer, "who put their trust in him," the holy abandonment, complete trust in him, "violating the king's command in Mesopotamian culture." You violate king's command, you're dead. "And yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any God except their own God." In other words, they chose to be in the fire. They had integrity. Their situation did not change them. They were consistent and honest. And because they stayed, God has delivered them. And this is no better statement than this and saying, congratulations, you passed. You see, this thing about integrity check, I need to tell you. This integrity check, it happens here and here. Right? It happens in your head, in your heart. No one else knows. Not even your spouse know this integrity check. And this is a kicker. Whether you pass the integrity check or not, nobody knows. Only God and you. This is an ingenious mechanism of integrity check. Because a lot of people, you'll be surprised, they live to impress other people. They project an image of faith where they don't have faith. They project an image that they are something when they are not. So, if the test, nobody can tell whether you pass the test or not pass the test, there's an easy temptation to not to go into fire because nobody can tell. There's no consequence in natural world. Why go through hardship when there's no consequences? See, this is a test of the heart. And because of the way it is set up, God wants to know your heart. Not that He doesn't know, that you have to know whether your faith is genuine or not. That's integrity. This is why it's so important to pass the integrity check. I cannot tell. The person sitting next to you cannot tell. Your spouse cannot tell. Even children cannot tell. Only you and God. And those people who pass this integrity check of this kind are the ones finish well. And most people fail do not pass this test are the ones who fail in this integrity check. So, the summary is this. Of the chapter 3, God is a deliverer of the faithful. Let me say this, God is a deliverer of the faithful. I wish I can say God is a deliverer of everybody, no matter what you do, no matter, whatever, however you choose to live your life, it doesn't matter. God delivers you everywhere. No, it's not true. That's a lie. The book of Daniel is very clear. God is a giver, God is a revealer of mystery, God is a deliverer, and so on. And these attributes of God is a respond to the faithfulness of His servants. It's revealed. And God is a deliverer of the faithful. And the second is that the three friends of Daniel trusted God with a perfect peace, willing to lay down their lives, even violating the king's command. Their faith was, as they say, even if not, the holy abandonment. And therefore they had true peace, hyper-situational peace in their lives. They experienced a miracle. They encounter, pre-incarnated Jesus. And their petty issues burned off. So finally, is this takeaway: only the faith of complete trust is hyper-situational, which affords us with peace of God. Many believers do not have peace of God because they don't have this trust, holy abandonment. Miracle often happens in the flames of fire. Some miracles exclusively happens in the flames of fire. And third, God is a deliverer of the faithful. And I pray all of us learn to abandon ourselves in the mercy and good intention of our Father in heaven. Amen. And I pray that you learn this as quickly as possible. Your quality of your life will be entirely different. And God's peace will flow in your life.